holding of this regular meeting of Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner. By the posting of a copy of said notice upon the bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on March 24th, 2021. By the emailing of a copy of said notice to the Asbury Park Press for publication on March 26, 2021. By the filing of a copy of said form of notice in the Township Clerk's office on March 24th, 2021. The public will be allowed to attend and allowed to participate pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of Public Law 1975, Chapter 127, NJAC 17:27. Mr. Bonovich?
Present.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Here.
Ms. Richmond?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Russo?
Here.
Mayor Berger?
Present.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. And please, let's have a moment of silence for all of our fallen soldiers and all of our members of the world who have passed from COVID. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it
stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all.
Thank you. So the discussion today is the 2021 municipal budget discussions with some department heads. Should we open?
Okay, Mayor, if we can jump right into it, since we're kind of tight for time today. I have DPW Director Paul Novello. He's already in the room and ready to go.
So if we have any questions for Paul, then we just put them over to the side and he'll get to them when he gets here.
For Lou, you mean?
I mean, Lou.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm looking at Paul reading and said Lou. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm going to start my presentation now, if that's okay.
Please. Will we be seeing it? Are you sharing it?
Yes. Okay. Let's see. Should have came over.
Click your share screen button, Paul.
I did. Do you see that now?
No.
Nope.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, today I'm going to be presenting Department of Public Works 2021 budget request. Today we're going to be talking about our salaries and our expenses. Public Works is broken down into 7 cost centers. We have roads, recycling, buildings and grounds, town hall, vehicle maintenance, solid waste, and clean communities. To start out with our road department, we're increasing our salaries $227,000 and our expenses $18,700. This department this division is made up of 31 members, of which 24 will be receiving a contractual step increase. We'd like to add 2 laborers and a DPW 1. We're increasing our part-time salary allocation, $25,000. That will cover our summer workforce of part-timers, our seasonal help, and also any winter seasonal help that we get. This year, we also have an increase in our uniform spending because contractually every other year we buy cold weather gear. This is the year we're buying it. And we also buying wet weather gear. I'd like to get 5 tablets for the road crew, primarily the supervisors. They can drive around, input work orders as they see things. We can also give one to our basin crew so they can keep track of basin repairs. Other operations within the road crew can share them when they're not in use.
Well,
yes?
may I ask a question? Is that a specialized tablet, or is that a, an any old iPad or Microsoft or whatever?
I'm going to defer to IT, but I'm looking for a standard tablet. In fact, it doesn't even have to be connected to the web. It can be synced when they do come back to the office, so we cut down on costs that way. I will look to get a decent case for them, something a little more rugged, because they will be using it outside.
Do they have cell phones from the township? Just asking.
The supervisors do, the others do not. Okay, and we're also looking to increase our training. Last year we trained all our guys in chainsaw safety, and that's an annual recurring thing we'd like to do. And also I'm looking to send someone to arborist training. So we've included that in the cost for training this year. Next is our recycling. Pretty much stays the same. In fact, it does stay the same. The salary is a stipend for our certified municipal recycling coordinator and all the work she does. The training covers any required training that she has, and her CEU, keeping those up to date. Next is our buildings and grounds. We have 9 members in buildings and grounds, of which 6 will be receiving contractual step increases. We have a DPW1 who's been working very hard for us, and I'd like to give him an incentive step increase. We've budgeted $30,000 to dispose of one of the 2 remaining oil tanks that are left over from the town converting from oil to gas. And we need to update some of our building alarms from copper to cellular because the copper is failing. Next is our town hall budget. There's 2 employees on this cost center, one of which will be receiving a contractual step increase. We've also added to our expenses the state contractor to do a deep carpet shampooing of all the carpets, stripping and resealing the vinyl tiles, and also the marble floor in the lobby for them to hone it and polish it. That hasn't been done probably since the building was built.
What does that cost?
Let me get that for you, ma'am. The honing and polishing of the floors is $7,400.
Paul,
Yeah.
It's Councilman Richmond. Is this cost shared with the Board of Ed since they're in the building with us and they're using the lobby and all that good stuff, or that's something we're just eating?
I think we do that as the landlord.
That's
Okay.
not, do they pay CAM?
Do they what?
Do the people who lease pay CAM?
Once again, I'll defer that to the manager, but I think that's all included in their lease.
Brian?
Yes, sorry, I was trying to unmute. Our regular tenants do pay a common area maintenance fee. The Board of Ed just pays an annual allotment towards building maintenance.
So if we have an increase here with this, do we get to increase their allotted amount as well?
And do we also assess the people who are leasing and do pay a portion of CAM? Can we do that?
We could certainly look into that. We've never increased their charges, so that was one of my plans for this year, is reviewing all those leases and increasing them accordingly.
Well, most CAMs go up every year.
I'm aware of that, but being the government and being in a landlord situation, it's a little more difficult with our leases to change that annually.
I respect that. So I guess the question is, can you just do an assessment for everybody in the building? And at that point, I don't know how many tenants we have, but whatever that cost is, get divided up everybody, including ourselves and the school.
Agreed. Agreed.
That's a fair way to do it. Why should we take on the whole thing if everybody is using the space?
Bingo. I agree.
Does the Board of Education have an allotment in a contractual venue?
I don't understand your question, Councilwoman.
So the Board of Education pays an allotment. Is that per year? Is that a 3-year agreement? Yeah. It's per year and it changes yearly?
I believe we had added an escalator into our agreement with them.
And how many years is the agreement?
Long, like 50. It was very long because of the situation that they were in prior to moving here.
It would occur to me that whatever the escalation that was added in, maybe we need to look at the escalation charges again. I will assume that the charges are minimal. I mean, because we're trying to be helpful to the Board of Education, but not at the expense of taxpayers. We don't want to take the full boat. So I think it's worthwhile looking at it again. I'd like to know at the next meeting exactly what their allotment is and what that contractual obligation of escalation is in fees.
So I concur with that, Brian. I think there's two things here at the table. One, we should do an assessment if we're going to do the entire building, and two, look at whatever the CAM assessments are for the lease tenants and give us that information as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to next division, vehicle maintenance. Out of the 8 full-timers, 6 will be receiving a step increase. We do have one person who's been a part-timer for a few years there. He helps out a lot. He runs and gets parts. We're trying to make him full-time. So that would also be at a grade 12 level. We had to add $15,000 for our insurance deductible. Our insurance deductible went up from $1,000 to $2,500 per incident. And I base this on a historical average of about 10 accidents a year. And we also decreased the car wash by $3,000 due to underutilization. Solid waste, we increased our contractual tub grinding twice a year. We're only allowed to have a pile 7,500 cubic yards. Right now, as in fact, today, the contractor started the first grinding, and we just have to keep an eye on it as we do our brush collection and the residents bring it in throughout the rest of the year.
Well, could I ask how you know that it's only 7,500 cubic yards or whatever? Just asking.
It's a good question, ma'am. And believe it or not, there is different ways to do it. I know some of the contractors have a drone that goes over and maps the pile. We do length times width times height divided by 27. And then we use the state formula of 67% of that volume because it's an irregular shape. It's not a hard volume.
Right.
So that's how we do it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyway, our contractual or recycling contract was just awarded this year, and that did go up, and we did budget correctly for that. And our landfill fees are covered. That's pretty much why this went up so much.
100%?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Well,
majority of that increase is that a pass-through?
Our previous contract for the recycling was, I think, about 700 and something. Trying to remember how much that was, 300 and something thousand. And now it's up to 700 and I have it here. Sorry, it's going up depending upon the cost per ton to dispose of it. Right now, I've seen a historical since December, a low of $73.25 a ton to a high of $76.25 a ton. So if we look at a bogey of $75 a ton, it's going to cost us about just under $850,000 a year. Any other questions on that?
Is that bid out? Do we bid that out?
That was just awarded, yes, ma'am.
Mayor, that was awarded at the meeting 2 meetings ago, I believe it was. You may recall I commented on the meeting about the large increase that we were anticipating.
Yeah.
This is something.
Large is one thing. This is, you know, Mondo.
This is something that every town has been dealing with. We were fortunate that we were locked into a contract until April of this year, that we got to retain our old rates. Several other towns were forced to pay increased fees for the last several years. As a matter of fact, our contractor did try getting us back to the bargaining table mid-contract to try and get us to pay more money, and they were quickly shut down for that argument.
So we have shared services agreement, right? So with some other towns, and I know for sure Colts Neck, right? So, I mean, is this just for Howell, or is this inclusive of Colts Neck and
This is just Howell. We did briefly discuss including Farmingdale with ours. However, they opted to not go through a shared service agreement, and they're still handling trash collection on their own.
Should we approach them again?
I'm sorry?
Should we approach Farmingdale again, being that the cost is so high?
Well, it would change our cost if we were to add in more.
It would just be higher, would it not?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Farmingdale's a small location. I don't think that a shared service with a neighbor that's small is advantageous to us.
Well, if they were paying us.
If we could do a shared service with the world, maybe we've got something.
Yeah, well, shared service, they're to pay us. We're not paying for them.
Right, they would pay us, but our number of houses picked up would increase as well. So they had opted to continue with having their own DPW pickup.
So they do it themselves?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Which that was briefly contemplated when we knew there was going to be such a significant increase. However, for us to start a municipal garbage collection program would be, or I'm sorry, a municipal recycling program of this magnitude would be extremely expensive between trucks and staffing that we would have to provide.
Will all the surrounding towns use the same service?
Nope, everyone bids it out separately and has different contractors.
Wall, Freehold, Jackson, everyone has a different person, that different contract, every single one.
Those that contracted out, yes.
Okay.
Well, could I ask a question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
On the landfill fees, is asphalt and concrete disposal higher than other disposals, or is this considered tonnage?
It's tonnage, and it fluctuates based on their what we call tipping fees, how much they charge per ton and how much we generate.
Okay, I see. All right, thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am. Any other questions? Okay, our clean communities. This is a floating number. It's based on the grant that we get, and Lou chime in. I think we get it a little later on in the summer, but it has been, pretty consistent across the boards. Out of this, we pay for our clean communities coordinator, who is certified by the state. Also, her clean community staff, who goes around and does roadside cleanups. Any clean communities literature and supplies that they use. Okay, here's a comparison from 2020 to 2021. We're asking for an 8%, a little over 8% increase in our salaries. Like I said, a lot of that is contractual. As far as our expenses, that number is large, and basically because of the increased cost of the recycling, that was the biggest number.
Did Lou get on the phone? I mean, on the call, the Zoom?
Yes, Mayor,
I'm here.
he's here.
Oh, because I can't see everybody. Okay, Lou, could you tell me how much of that 300,000 is contractual?
Bear with me a moment.
As a matter of fact, I'm going to be asking you that for everything.
Sure, and I have those breakdowns. Let's see, a good so about let me see here.
Hey, Lou, I can tell you a quick number. So the road department, the contractual salary increases and step increases.
No. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. But it'll be much easier if Lou will just give me one big number, and I
so
get
around $121,000 of that would be considered for the contractual salary increases and step increases within the within his cost center.
121, you said?
About $121,000.
The 121,000 is contractual,
right?
And all the rest is
proposed upgrades, proposed new employees that are being requested.
Okay.
Did we do anything with the basin maintenance fund?
Right. And because we had in the roads department, we had there was a portion of the employee salary that was being charged to the basin maintenance trust. As our deposits to the basin maintenance started becoming less and less, we've been trying to filter some of those allocations back over into the road department. So this year we had fully removed those budgets to the basin maintenance and absorbed that back into the road cost center. So yes, Paul, thank you for bringing that up. That also does factor in as well. Pardon?
Could we have that as a footnote as well?
Yes, ma'am.
More importantly, how many employees do we anticipate coming over to this line item as opposed to the basin line item?
Well, at the time, I believe it was one employee. It was 1.5 employees' salary was what was being charged. Was being remainder of what was being charged to the basin.
Which is the number that I just asked you for.
That okay? Bear with me a second. That
Mayor,
accounts.
if I can, real quick, in your budget binders that you've been given, with each department, the first page is the summary. The next page breaks it down for that cost center. What are contractual salary increases?
Oh, yeah, I looked. But it was just all right. I mean, I could do it that way, but okay.
I think to answer everyone's question, it's going to account for about $78,000 bring in salaries that are being absorbed back into the current budget.
Okay.
Because obviously there's a finite number of there's a finite amount of money that's within the basin trust, and we didn't want to totally fully spend it down.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Brian, as well. I did have it. I was playing boss for a minute. Sorry.
I want to let you know that you had that info, available.
Yeah. It's all. Thank you.
Okay. So here's your eye test for the day. Here's a comparison from 2016 to 2021. And while we're increasing our cost, I just want to show you something. we need some form of metric to show what we're doing. And we use work orders. And I'm showing you here 2018, 2019, and 2020 work orders, January, February, all the way through December. The green is 2020. So you can see we've been increasing. We had a spike last year in July and August. But overall—
Storm last year?
Pardon me, ma'am?
Didn't we have a storm last year?
Yes, ma'am. That was a spike in those two.
Yeah.
But if you want to look, this is before the storm. From 2019, in 2018, we had 1,284 work orders completed. In 2019, we had 1,600. That's a little over 24% increase. In 2020, we had 1,801 work orders, which is over 40% increase from 2018.
So can I ask how many actual work orders you had with each of those years?
I would have to get that information for you, but we don't have a—
Well, I mean, because, right, if the number of work orders did not significantly increase that way, but maybe people are just more efficient, or maybe there are some people that are doing a better job getting to more work orders. So I would like to see what were the total number of work orders for those 3 years so that we could, you know, identify.
Okay, ma'am, I can get that out to the manager who can distribute it.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes my briefing. Are there any questions?
Hey, Paul, Councilman Bonovich. I'm just looking at your part-time personnel in the increase. Last year you requested 75,000 and you used 17. This year you requested 100,000.
Yes. Last year we did not get any part-time employees except for the one that we had, the one that we had kind of on staff. We didn't go out for any seasonals due to COVID.
Okay.
That's correct. For the council's benefit, we did have a hiring freeze in effect throughout last year, so there were no seasonals hired. That's reflective of the amount spent.
Okay, and then why the additional 25? We're hiring that many more? Is it some see? Is that what's going on?
I can tell you what I projected it as. I based the seasonals. Where is it? I was looking at getting 8 seasonals for the summer for 12 weeks.
Okay.
And 4 seasonals for the winter at 4 weeks. And they get paid about $12 an hour.
What was it, 8 for 12 weeks?
About 12 weeks in the summer and 4 weeks in the winter. And 8 for 12 in the summer, 4 for 4 in the winter.
Gotcha.
Any other questions?
No, I'm good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Paul, if you could forward me a copy of that presentation, and I'll get that whole thing over to the governing body so they can review it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. I will be moving Matt Howard in. Uh-oh. Getting an error message. Not letting me move him in. Hold on a second. Okay, Matt is coming into the room now.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Matt.
Zoom doesn't like it when I'm the moderator. I'm the keeper of the Zoom account, and I was signed in under the township email, so that didn't work. Sorry about that. So I have a presentation prepared. I'm going to share my screen in a second. Hang on. All right, can everyone see?
Yes.
All right. So as you know, in community development, we have 5 cost centers: engineering, planning, land use, zoning board of adjustment, construction, and code enforcement. In engineering, we have 3 employees currently. Planning and land use, we have 2. Zoning Board of Adjustment, we have 1. Construction, 13, and code enforcement, 6. So it's a total of 25 employees at the current moment. So I wanted to start by just giving a brief overview of some of the bigger changes. We'll go through some of the other numbers and more specifics, but the tables are pretty big, pretty detailed. So I thought I'd just give the overviews of the major increases. We have $35,000 added into the land use and planning cost center. That is for master plan updates. The idea is that there's been talk about looking at our master plan again, maybe some zoning ordinances, maybe some different things. We want to get ahead of it. We usually budget some. This is putting in a big chunk extra. We usually do about 15,000. This is adding 35,000 so we can cover multiple big items if they are to come up. I've also included 20,000 additional for the property demolition program. We already have 20,000 in the budget. We did our first demolition this year. It came to about that number. Expecting to do at least 1 or 2 next year. Maybe a bigger structure would cost a little bit more. Thought I'd add a little bit more into the budget. Also 6,000 for mapping software. This is a proprietary service that ultimately gives us aerials 3 to 4 months, every 3 to 4 months in the past. So from a code enforcement standpoint, engineering, a lot of different uses, not just enforcement, but to see what changes are occurring in town and to be able to use that as a point of reference. We're proposing department-wide 1 upgrade, and that's in the code enforcement group. That is to get myself as a land use officer a little help on the day-to-day tasks of permits and dealing with emails, phone calls, and other requests from the public. So we're also going to go into the revenue a little bit later with the bigger tables. One major difference, 2019, we had a very large development application come in with an application fee of $205,000. Obviously, we didn't get anything that size last year, so that definitely shows on the revenue side. Road opening fees were very high in 2020. That is not something that we're expecting to move forward. Most likely the spending from the utilities is going to scale back because of COVID, so we think those fees are going to be much lower. The building department was down $80,000 total. Based on COVID and the few months, especially in the middle of the year, where things were really low, we actually expect that number to be much further down. It actually rebounded pretty nicely, and we have good indications from the first 2 or 3 months so far this year that it's looking better. Code enforcement. This is where we saw the most consistent decreases. They're not on the scale of even some of the ones listed. But rentals, we seem to, that's a market trend. Probably as a COVID side effect, we had less rental applications. Abandoned properties even, which is our real property mortgage program. Seems that banks, instead of wanting to pay the fees and register as an abandoned property, they hire a realtor and they rent the property instead. So we may in the future see more rental applications and less abandoned properties, which is a good thing. These are occupied properties versus abandoned sitting there and looking for maintenance. Violations, we did get higher compliance. We also tried to be much more understanding due to COVID, giving second chances where maybe normally we didn't. So there was a little bit less revenue in the courts. So moving on, this is just our budget table, a comparison of 2021 and 2020. Most of the salary increases are contractual. Lou can back me up, but I have that about 55,000 is from contractual step increases. That's about 43% of the increase that we're proposing at the bottom. At the bottom, the proposed increase is 128,000 or about 6% total. That's with everything included. The 1 upgrade is included in here. Everything else salary-wise is a step increase. Expenses-wise, as I mentioned, in the second table, the planning and land use group, there was a large increase. That's the 35,000 for the master plan update. And then we also had in code enforcement, the large increase is where the 20,000 for the demolition project comes in. That is what is attributing to the 6% increase mostly.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
That abandoned property, we went from 20 to 40. Does that money come back to us?
It does. So thank you for bringing that up. Those are lienable expenses. So when we do spend that money, the lien is placed on the property. It might not come back for several months or years, but it definitely will come back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This is just a look back from the same numbers, but looking back further in the past. 2019 is a bit of a good comparison in terms of spending and our expenditures, just because that's pre-COVID. I think we're definitely going to see some trends in 2020 and 2021 that differ a little bit, especially based on the development side. From the revenue standpoint, again, in 2020, we did see some trends due to mostly COVID. I had mentioned in the engineering department that the road opening fees, we took in over $380,000. As you can see in past years, that is significantly higher. That is based on some of the utility work going on in town. I would not expect a number that high next year. There was a lot of give and take in these numbers. So where we were 200,000 higher in the road opening fees, the planning board application fees, for example, we were almost 200,000 less. Actually, it's kind of a funny point that when you put the board fees together and subtract out the large application that we received in 2019, they're almost within $100 of each other. That application was definitely the anomaly. We did have increase in zoning board application fees. These are market trends, just the type of applications we're getting. We do see that the zoning board tends to be consistently busier than the planning board. I think we're catching a little bit more of the non-conforming uses and some of the things that need variances, where maybe in the past they would have gone to the planning board. But that's just a small trend we've been seeing. And then in code enforcement, we definitely see a decrease in the revenues that are coming in, again, from the violations, higher compliance, rental certificates were lower, landlord registration stayed about the same, but that abandoned property registry, especially if you look back from 2017 and 16 to where we are today, the abandoned property registry has definitely decreased significantly, but that's a good thing. We don't have the abandoned properties anymore. Those quickly turn into blights. Our code enforcement does a great job in keeping up with the maintenance, but sometimes it's difficult to do so and find that responsible party. Right now, they're occupied, which is good. Overall, our intake in terms of revenue was 2.5 million, which is down from the 2.7 million of 2019. Again, right within that margin for error with all those balances of your road opening, maybe your development applications, we still did show a positive balance of almost 450,000 for the year. This is just a comparison of those same revenues compared to from 2020 to 2019. I think I covered most of the big changes. So if there's any questions, you can let me know. Otherwise, that's where we are.
Can you go back one screen, one slide?
Sure.
Thank you. And you said this year, as far as planning board, you see an increase already, that 53 is.
Building department, we're definitely seeing the increase. Planning board comes and goes as the applications do. One or two big applications is almost enough to swing for the entire year. We are hearing word of a few large ones between both boards. So if those do come in, we think we'll hold steady on these numbers, if not better.
Is that 53? Is that the lowest we ever had in history?
Going back one more table for the planning board. No, we were in the 20s in 2018 and 17.
Wow, interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. You actually answered a lot of the questions that I had, so.
I'm glad to hear that. I had the benefit of watching the previous presentation.
Thank you.
Our department heads, Paul Orlando, Justin Yost, and myself, we did make a concerted effort to try and keep the budget lower or flat, especially based on, we know the economic climate of the town and the country, state, county, everybody. Unfortunately, there are some increases that are required, but we did want to also listen to what the public's saying and what we're hearing at the council meetings in regards to the master plan and make sure we're prepared for any work that needs to be done this year.
Well
Thank
done.
All right, thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
You.
Brian, question, capital, we're gonna talk about that at a different time.
Correct, yes. We're just doing the operating budget right now. I actually just texted Chief Kudrick to let him know we're a little bit ahead of schedule if he can
So I
jump on.
have a couple of questions since we're waiting for the chief, right? So I have been going through this manual, and some, for example, and this is just the one that I pulled up before when I was looking, so I could just use it as an example for no other reason. So if you go into the Fire Prevention Bureau and you go to the second page, it'll say 2018, 2019, and 2020. And under 2020, it gives you just the totals. It doesn't go through and list 2020's salaries, so we could see the difference from 2020 to the proposed to 21. But then there are other departments that absolutely do that.
Well, I will have to ask Lou about this, but
I would like,
go ahead.
I would like to be able to, for me not to have to do the calculation, obviously, and if it's a zero, I could see that, but if it's not zero, then I wanna, if there is an increase, I would like there to see it.
I do have the spreadsheets that have all of the 2020 budget, budgeted salaries and whatnot that I could provide to the governing body. I was just trying to determine what was, the best use of how to provide these reports to you guys in this manner using our new financial software.
Okay. That's cool. So you could just email it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, so everyone is aware, in case you notice some changes in the formatting. We've started rolling out using our finance software to actually do the budget this year. This is the first time we're doing this, so that's part of the difference in the.
How was the, was it easy to use or user friendly?
I believe so. I think it was just a little bit of an adjustment for the department heads, but by them getting it this way, like when they do their purchase orders or their requisitions, they're actually working in this program. So they're dealing with the numbers real time. And I have Chief Kudrick coming into the room now.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Whenever you're ready, Chief, you can go ahead and begin. We'll jump right into yours.
Okay, great. Okay, so good afternoon. I present to you the 2021 police budget. I would like to start off, well, I have three budgets to go over. First is the PD, the second is the EMS, and the third is communications 911 dispatch. The first one would be the PD budget. If you have this in front of you by any chance, or something similar to it, it's the overview of my 2021 budget. Under salaries and wages, I had anticipated a $50,000 decrease in overtime, going from $700,000 to $650,000 for this year. However, with the PBA contract being settled, I am asking for an additional $50,000 to cover some unanticipated overtime that'll be generated that wasn't projected back in September when I completed this. So instead of $650,000, I'm asking for $700,000 in my overtime. I know, not a good start, but it's just the reality of the contract. Going to my other expenses, the operating expenses, there's 18 line items that are in my budget. They are broken down by, there's 5 decreases of those line items, 8 increases, and 5 remain flat. Those 5 decreases, I was able to use existing equipment, stuff that we may not necessarily need right now. Also, there was just no need for some of the stuff that I had previously budgeted for. With the increases, some of them were for the new officers that I'm going to be requesting to be hired. Ammunition, we all know the environment around guns and ammunition and how they can't be found. Fortunately, because of the budgets in the past, we have been able to stock up on some ammunition, so it wasn't too bad of a hit. But ammunition as a whole has increased considerably throughout the market. So that's just an added expense of our firearms program. And there was a couple other increases which weren't that major.
Chief.
Yes.
Excuse me, Chief. Before you go further, I don't want to forget this question. What
Sure.
kind of a surplus do you anticipate having with the ammunition?
Right now, the way that we look at it, we're good for this year into next year, but we don't know what type of environment we're going to be looking at next year. So it's always been practice with us to stock up on our ammunition while we have it, because it's always going to be more expensive. We know that. Nothing gets cheaper out there, especially in the emergency services. So we're good. Like I said, we're good for this year. Next year, we don't know how it's going to look next year.
And how long of a storage period can you rely on keeping the ammunition in tip-top condition?
So we do probably either a 2 or 3 year cycle of our ammunition. Once you start going beyond that, I mean, that room's not temperature controlled. Ammunition is pretty stable. It could last quite some time, but it's not like we have enough ammunition, for 5 years worth of qualifying and all the practice that we do.
Okay.
So would you say that you use the FIFO method?
The what?
The FIFO method, first in, first out?
We actually cycle it out. So it's almost like what they do at the supermarket, right? They put the older products up first. Yeah, that's exactly what we do. Yep. That's exactly what we do.
That's an assumption we all make. You're right, Chief. In and out.
Hey, Chief, I have a question, and I'm going to go back to Councilman Bonavich's shared service. We always look to do things cheap with other towns. And I know that we have other towns coming in and using our firing range. Can we do something bulk-wise and order more ammunition and divvy it up? Or can we hold it for other towns? Because obviously you said it's hard to, it's going to get harder and harder, more expensive. Would that be something we could do?
Well, I mean, everything's always possible, right? I'll never say we can't do something. So, but the problem is storage. Right now, anyone's welcome to come down to the PD anytime and see the problems that we have with storage. Everyone's well aware of it. So our armory right now is just packed. It's packed with equipment. It's packed with ammunition. There's certain things that we have to keep locked up. Some explosives that we have, that gets all locked up. But could we do something like that? Order as a bulk and keep it here? Yeah, we could do that. It's just that the storage would be an issue. Now, could we lock it up in an exterior storage shed? We could do that, but then you're subject to temperature regulations.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just moving on, is there any questions about the line items? It's pretty much consistent. There's no new surprises in there as far as all those 18 line items. The one other big thing that I would like to address is the vehicles. I know it's in capital, but in 2016, that was in my operating budget. It's been in the PD's operating budget well before 2016. 2016, one of the council people recommended that it be removed from operations and be put into capital. No big deal. However, we saw the delays in addressing capital that pushed our vehicle usage of the current vehicles and delayed our new vehicles being delivered to us for quite some time. And then with the pandemic, the vehicle manufacturers decided to start revamping all their cars. They took them off the line, so we couldn't get certain cars for a year. So that really set us back. And then last year, we didn't even address capital, and I had 10 cars in capital. So our fleet right now is going to be in crisis if we don't address this vehicle issue. We're going to be good for this year as far as using those cars this year. However, that's it. Half the fleet's going to be end of their service life by the middle of next year. So what I'm asking to do is put some cars in my operating budget and do the other half maybe in capital for this year as well.
Hey, Chief.
So there's 10 cars that were budgeted for last year that didn't get addressed. And that is going to be an issue because we cycle our cars every 3 years. We cycle our cars every 3 years. They then get pushed to the detective bureau. Once the detective bureau is done using them, they get pushed to detail cars. So once we lose that year, like we did last year, now we're extending the service life of some of these cars an extra year that they weren't meant to be on the road. We're already pushing them to 100,000. Now some of our cars are up over 100,000 miles on the road right now. And it's just, it's not a good situation to be in.
I have a question. Brian, if we had it in capital, if we had the money in capital approved and we didn't use it, can it still be used? Can those cars be ordered today?
It depends on how the specific capital ordinance was written, which is something I would ask Lou to comment on. If it's written broad enough, we can. I will comment. I have been researching a lease program. Chief, I don't know if you caught that email. I realize you're on vacation, but I actually have a presentation going on tomorrow about a lease program that's available. Will you be able to have a rep sit in on that, or?
Yeah, Sergeant Levine's already going to be there. He's going to be there. All
right. Hey, Chief, I have a question.
Sure.
You just said, we have enough cars to the end of the year. That's, on average, you definitely lose a car here or there. It's, it's just unfortunate. Not to any of the guys' fault, but these cars, accidents happen. So you're saying we're okay to the end of the year, but what if you had 3 or 4,
Well, I'm telling you the way that the condition of the fleet is in right now at this present state, we'll be okay to do our regular patrols for the rest of the year.
So if we lost, just say a horrible situation, we lost 3 or 4 cars, what do we do with the guys? They have to double up? What do we do with that? How do we handle that?
So say the town takes a stance as we're not going to buy any police cars. We're not going to address last year's issue. We're not going to purchase any vehicles this year. That would be, first of all, it would just be awful. I would then, and we've prepared for this already. I mean, we do these types of scenarios pretty often. And what it would resort to is I would have to make the decision to cut the fleet in half, put half the amount of patrol cars on the road, double those cars up, and then start decreasing mileage. So they wouldn't be patrolling as much just to save the service life on those cars. Gotcha. So, it's something that's very, very basic. It's needed. We stretch our cars to the fullest potential. We don't run them till they're dead on the road because we need to then turn them over to the detective bureau, traffic, all the support services that we have not on the front line. And then once those cars are done, we have detectives driving around in cars that are 12 years old. They're not complaining or anything like that, but it's just, that's how long we get out of these cars. And then once those cars get done with the detectives, once the DPW says that they're no longer in roadworthy condition, then we use them on the back end for details. So on the construction sites, all those cars, they're not roadworthy anymore. They're not pursuit worthy anymore. They basically have been decommissioned as police cars, and now we use them for details. So we really get a lot of years out of these cars. But when we're talking about 3 years with the cars, when we cycle those cars out every 3 years, right, up to 100,000 miles, we lose a year. We're forced to keep those other vehicles on the road that much longer, which then ends their service life, probably not being able to get turned into a secondary vehicle. So it really becomes problematic. We can manage, just like I say, if I request 5 officers and I get 1 or 2, we can still manage. If I request 10 cars and we end up getting 7 or 8, we could still manage. Not getting any cars at all, it's an issue. It's a big issue.
When a car does get totaled, do we replace that one, or we have to wait the whole year for the following capital?
So last year, 2 of our frontline cars, 2 supervisor cars got destroyed. One was completely out of commission, so we lost that. And the second one was repaired and is back on the road. So like that first one, it was a unmarked Tahoe. It was a supervisor's vehicle, and it's in great shape. I believe it had 10,000 miles on it, or 20,000 miles. So it had really low miles. That's just gone. And that's no fault of anybody here. We've never We've never been like that. Whereas, okay, chief, you just got a brand new car destroyed. Here's money, go out and buy another one until we get the insurance. It's never been that way. And we manage, we just get by it and we just wait for the next year for a new car to come out.
So that money doesn't, the insurance money doesn't come back to you, Lou, it comes back to the general fund?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
No, I'm sure. And maybe the manager will say I'm wrong, but I'm sure if I went to him and I said, you know, manager, we just got this car destroyed. Can we look at buying another car? I'm sure he'll work with me on that. It's just never been done in the PD. So we just lose that car. That money goes back to the general insurance fund, and we just manage to, you know, to patrol without it.
Okay, something to think about. I mean, you know, if it's insurance money coming back, let's get the car.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is that, Brian, would that be something is that the council would be looking at and agreeing to, or who would have to, you know, make that decision on if we can move forward that way? When the insurance comes back, that we put it back into a vehicle immediately.
If a vehicle is to be purchased, it has to be approved by the governing body. Those are the resolutions that you get periodically anytime we expend that amount of money.
I understand, but I'm saying in this specific case, it doesn't, we're changing a process, yes? So would that process have to be approved by council is my question, or you can change that process?
We can certainly change the process. That's a policy decision that the governing body, if you guys want to go that way, you know, you direct me, this is what we want to do going forward, then it'll happen. That just needs to be communicated from the governing body.
So Manager Geegan, based on what the mayor just asked, is that a big ask, or is it, I mean, it seems to be that the waiting of the year and then now we're on 2 years, there's no replenishing program that we could kind of circumvent the system, so to speak. There's no just in case fund either. So how do we get there? So we don't have to wait another year for 10 more cars to be cycled in and out.
And actually, to get to that, Pam, we don't even know specifically. I mean, we're not told specifically if a car is out, right? If from PD, we're not told, oh yeah, we have 3 cars out or we have 1 car out. So we wouldn't know to say, yeah, Brian, take that insurance money and put it into another car. Instead, maybe it should just be an automatic that if the car gets destroyed, then immediately whatever insurance comes back, it goes back into a vehicle.
Yeah, like a discretionary kind of thing that would be based, obviously, we trust our chief, we trust our manager for those to make a decision without always having to come to the governing body. Obviously, with these circumstances that are unforeseen, but it seems to be detrimental to the police everyday, you know, work, because we have to wait for capital to get 10 more cars to replace 1 car that who knew that, you know, was going to be destroyed, right? I guess that's what I'm asking.
If I could, it would occur to me, Chief, if the car was out of commission, why didn't you just go to the manager and say, we've lost a brand new vehicle. When the insurance money comes in, you know, can we go ahead and replace it? I mean, I'm just curious why you just didn't go to him.
Right, I never did, and we have never functioned like that in the PD. Once we lost the car, we just lost the car, and we just moved on.
Yes. Well, that's my suggestion. That
if it was destroyed. Now, Councilwoman, very rarely does a car get totaled. Right, the cars, most of them get repaired, so we just lose them for a month or 2 and they're back.
Right.
But there are occasions, and a manager where him and I, and he negotiated a used car through Barnegat. We got one of our police vehicles, a canine vehicle, through like a shared service through Barnegat. We bought one of their used canine vehicles that they're no longer using. So in a case whereas maybe like one of our older patrol vehicles gets hit and gets destroyed and gets and they decide it's totaled, maybe I would not request a brand new car to replace one that maybe had, you know, 80,000 miles on it that was ended of service life. Maybe I'll say, all right, let me have $10,000. Let me go buy another car, take all the equipment out of the one that's destroyed, and now I have another car for 10 grand.
I guess my thought process, instead of changing the whole process, when something like this comes up where something's destroyed, it seems to me that the quicker fix and the more immediate answer is to try to work something out with the manager. So instead of changing the whole process, because I'm not sure we really know exactly what we're talking about at this point, I just would encourage you to go right to the manager.
Well,
right. So that's what the manager says he needs direction from you guys.
exactly, with all due respect.
And that's my direction. That's my point. If you would just go to the manager, like, I don't even know that cars are in the program today. I don't want to miss out on the rest of the presentation based on cars.
I understand, but I think that this is a change in this should be a change in our process.
Well,
so
we should talk about this.
Needs to be documented, if I'm correct. I don't know. Brian, you've been waiting to speak, so please go ahead.
If I may comment on a few things here. We're talking about police vehicles, which they're basically a consumable commodity. They get used, they get beat on, for lack of a better term. They lose their value quickly. So quite often when they're involved in the crash, the amount of money we're getting from insurance is not full replacement value. That's the first piece of it. So the second piece is there are only certain times of the year when you can order a police package vehicle, and they're usually very tight windows. So that is part of the reason why we're not ordering them piecemeal one by one. You know, usually it's a bulk purchase, you know, we're ordering a large number at any time. So getting back to the other thing, we can discuss it at a different time since we're, you know, have other stuff to get into and we have, you know, tight timeline. But if the policy of the governing body wants to be to go in that direction, that's absolutely fine. It's not a big deal. You know, the chief has had other issues that have come up. There was an issue with a server recently that needed an emergency replacement. We got that done. So we do accommodate emergencies as they're needed. It's just the process has been, you know, that is part of his justification for the following year. You know, he needs X number of vehicles, you know, so many as regular replacements, so many because there were a certain number involved in crashes. So if that helps answer some of the questions.
So I would just ask, and just to end the vehicle discussion, I would just ask that since it's not known when the capital is going to be discussed or even approved, and money's not even available usually until the fall anyhow, I would ask that a portion of those vehicles get placed back into the operational budget. That way, once the regular budget gets approved, I can actually start buying those cars. And usually the deadline is in the spring. If I don't meet that state deadline, which we never have in the past few years because it ends in April, when it goes out to state bid, when that state bidding ends, then we have to put those cars out for bid in the fall. And it just adds an additional month, and it creates a headache for the two people that do my fleet. So can we move on? Okay. As far as the PD budget, I know I'm just going to hit, there's a couple targets here I just want to hit that are just always a concern in the budget. So obviously personnel, right now I'm at 93 officers. There's 3 that are expected to retire. So actually I'm at 96. The manager recognized that there was a need to get these officers trained in anticipation of these retirements. So he forwarded me 3 officers, which I appreciate. They're in the academy right now. Once they graduate the academy, so they're on the book. So it looks like I have 96 officers. Actually, I have 93. And once the 3 officers that are expected to retire do so within the next couple of months, those officers are going to be replacing them. So I'm at 93 officers right now. In my budget, I'm asking for an additional 5 new ones to start bringing me up to closer of my number of 100 police officers. Now those 5, they would all be assigned, 3 of them would be assigned to patrol, 2 of them would be assigned to my technical services bureau. I'll forward you an additional report after this. When you see the amount of technology issues that we have as far as the state mandated body worn camera program and all the OPRA requests and all the discovery requests that we have to do in a review and a redaction of all of that technology. Just to give you an example, Bricktown has 5 officers assigned to that just that unit, just for doing body worn cameras and technology. I don't have not one assigned specifically just to do that. I just don't have the personnel to do that. Instead, we spread those responsibilities out over a few personnel, and 2 of them happen to be civilians who look for some obvious issues, but don't really know the policies of the police department. So it becomes problematic. Now, although I'm asking for these personnel to be included just to do the IT portion of it, or for the body worn camera portion of it, it looks like tomorrow I'm on a state with a grant that looks like it's going to reimburse for previous purchases and personnel and and hardware and software. So I'll have a better idea of how much money we're going to get as a police department tomorrow. That's when the state is giving us our webinar on that. And I have to apply for it. So it looks like a lot of the money that we're getting back that we have already put out for the body worn camera program, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It looks like we're going to get a good portion of that back. So there's a good chance that if I can sign 2 officers just to this unit, just to do this, their salaries may get offset somehow. I'm not going to tell you that's a definite. I don't know. Just throwing that out there. And I'll know better tomorrow. So I'll advance a memo to the manager after that meeting or after that webinar. And then the rest of the officers would go to supplement patrol. Going back to the overtime issue, I recently put in a alteration to our schedule. Completely, you can do that as a chief. It doesn't affect their vacation or anything else like that. It puts a buffer on the schedule, which allows me right now, if a police officer calls out sick, it's automatic overtime up in patrol. I put an officer buffer up there, which basically, if an officer calls out sick, there's at least a 1 officer buffer. That's not going to create, so it does create overtime. It looks like it's going to be a potential issue with the union, but I'll work that out. It's no big deal. But I'm trying to alleviate that overtime as much as I possibly can.
Is that the overtime that you spoke about? That the 50,000 decrease?
Yeah, well, I went down 50,000 when I prepared this budget in anticipation of putting in this buffer. And then the contract got settled, which gave them a few extra days off. So I had to compensate for that as well, and which I wasn't predicting back in September. So that 50,000 would cover those additional days off that those police officers got. So, but at the same time, we also have some other control mechanisms in place to try to compensate for that. Not a big deal. It's not a big deal. But I just need to have the money there just in case it doesn't go the way that I want it to go.
So, Chief, if we hired these 5 bodies for this year, and by the way, did you get the bodies that you needed from last year?
Yeah, during the budget hearing with the manager a few months ago, I thought, and all I do was just ask to put this out there next time you guys finalize the budget. Just let me know that hard number. I thought I had 2 approved last year, and I was told 1 approved. So all I ask is that when that finalized budget comes out, if you just give me that hard line number of how many hires that I actually have, that way I'm not anticipating one that I don't have.
Was that to 2 for 1, Mr. Geegan?
No, Councilwoman, what was originally, what was finally approved in last year's budget was replacing all retirees plus 1 additional. That's what was finally approved. We had the hiring freeze for most of last year due to COVID, and we've since gotten caught up with those hires.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, that safety should have been on a hiring freeze, but so if you get these 5, let's say 5 bodies, right? How will that affect your overtime? Would that help the overtime?
No, I'll be honest with you. It's not going to help. It's not going to help out the overtime. The reason being is that manager and I have already had these discussions about supervisors. We all know that the current culture right now in law enforcement, right? So there's a tremendous amount of responsibility on the police department for having a proper number of supervisors and supervision on each given shift. Right now, some of our shifts only require 1 supervisor to be present, and it could be in charge of 8 to 10 police officers. So that's just the way the schedule is. We're a little bit above what we were in the 80s as far as supervisors, but it's something that we've been in discussion with the manager, which he understands it, of adding a couple more supervisory assignments to make sure that we're protected if something happens to.
Chief.
I'm sorry, Tommy, just one more question to that. It was so if we constantly, I don't know, I'm just asking, but $650,000 represents overtime, but that also can represent people to be on straight time, not on overtime, and you have additional people then you know, you're able to do additional jobs as well. So, I mean, do we want to, as a council, look at it as, you know, every year, keep going forward with $500,000+ in overtime? Or do we want to take that money that if we could go back historically, you know, with overtime, how it's been over every year, to go back and say, do we want to use that in a more proactive way by increasing, you know, on PD? But obviously then, Andy, you are then very much responsible to cover, you know, make sure that the overtime goes to like almost nothing, as long as we're.
Yeah, the overtime is never going to be reduced down to nothing. You would have to have.
Oh, I mean, I don't mean, I know that. I'm just being.
And we're pretty similar to Middletown. So, you know, when we compare police departments as size and demographics and all that, Middletown is around the same overtime as we are. In order to really bite into that overtime, because it's mainly all for shift coverage, there would have to be significant officers hired and placed on all those shifts in order to create that buffer. So when someone calls out sick, it's not just automatic overtime. So, or what I do is I reduce the amount of police officers that are on a road, the mandatory minimums. Instead of, you know, 9 on evening shift, you know, you make it 7, and then, but you keep that buffer up until 9, so nobody can take off. That's the only way to do it. But then officers can't get their time off, then it becomes a contractual issue. It's just bad. So yeah, by having those 5 officers, I can't tell you that it's gonna bite into the overtime too much, because look at the way that things have gone over the past few years, right? Pandemic, we were all kind of okay last year, but then we got hit with a storm, ice storm. I mean, it's just, there's so many factors that play into that overtime. It's not just,
well, that's
not just shortage of people.
That's understandable, the factors, the external factors. But I was just, you know, just for me, I mean, that's what I'd be looking at. I'd be looking at how can I decrease at least half the overtime, and could I, you know, to get bodies in.
Yeah, so that's understandable for a department our size. That's a pretty standard somewhere in there. If you guys recall back prior to me coming in, our overtime was 1.3 million a year. That's just crazy. And that was just a few simple fixes right there in order to get that down. But I can't. There's not too many options I have anymore to reduce the overtime without really creating cuts in service. All right, so I'll just move on here because I know I got 15 more minutes.
Chief, I have one quick question. I apologize. Jump in. How many supervisors are on each shift?
So all the divisions are set up the same. So you have 1 lieutenant. So say, well, I'll just talk about evening shift that's on right now. There's 1 lieutenant, there's 2 sergeants, and there's anywhere between 18 and 20 police officers assigned to that shift. They're not all working. It's just that 18 to 20 assigned to evening shift. So say right now on a Monday, right now you have a lieutenant on, you have a sergeant on, and you probably have maybe 10 police officers out on the road right now.
Okay.
But that's not mandatory. Our mandatories are 1, because if I made it mandatory 2, some supervisors can never get a day off. It's just the way that the schedule works. So when you're talking that you have 1 lieutenant on and 10 police officers, so not only is that lieutenant doing the road responsibilities, he's doing the watch commander responsibilities, all that stuff that's coming into the headquarters, all the questions, other stuff from investigations from other PDs, teletypes, everything that's coming in, inquiries that you need a watch commander for, which sometimes we just don't have. It's the road sergeant who then has to come in and do all the responsibilities of a lieutenant. It's pretty antiquated. I mean, we always say it's not a problem until it becomes a problem. And with this culture nowadays, that's the first thing they're going to rip into us on a claim is that failure to supervise properly. So if you want, I could prepare a little bit more of a justification memo and forward that through the manager.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Chief, if I can just interject a quick comment about, we still have 2 positions that are basically in limbo, correct? While we're waiting for the Attorney General to make some decisions.
That's correct, sir. Yeah.
So,
but we also
just to remind
so we're maxed out at lieutenants right now, and I have that ordinance revision memo that I'll reissue, asking for the council just to expand the number of my officers. I can't promote another lieutenant right now because we're maxed out on lieutenants at 5. So I'll throw everything down in a memo. That way it's a little bit more clear to you since we're running out of time here. So also in the PD, you'll see in my records division, there's a replacement for a retirement that has not been filled. This past year, since there was a hiring freeze, it was backfilled with a part-timer. There's only 2 ladies in my records division right now, and they are just swamped. They finally got caught up with all the firearms applications. We used to have a several month backup. They've been working their tails off. I don't mean that inappropriately, but they've done an extremely very competent job in order to get us caught up. And now people are not even waiting that long at all for firearms permits. They did an outstanding job. But that used to be a division that used to have 4 ladies in it. And now we only have 2 full-time. So I'm requesting that to be considered, that position to be placed back in my budget for this year. There's an upgrade to Ms. Tanner, Carlene, my executive assistant. That is, it may be a union issue, but basically the problem comes there is that our civilian staff, especially in the police department, they don't have a direct supervisor. It's different unions. They're controlled differently than the police personnel. And she would basically be made to be in charge of the civilian personnel. I already spoke about the grant of the body worn camera. There's a couple other grants that we're working on right now to try to offset some operational costs. We got a $100,000 grant not too long ago. That helps out our services and our community-oriented policing. And that's basically it on the PD side. Any questions as far as that concerns? I hit the major topics, you know, the ones that are most expensive.
Could I ask about emergency EMS?
We can move on to EMS. Yes, ma'am.
So what strikes me is the request for the salary request. In the final number we spent was $93,000 in 20. But the request at this point is $300,000, or is that a typo?
Mayor, if I can comment on that. Again, we did have a hiring freeze in last year's budget, which you may recall was formulated and introduced pre-COVID. We had added 4 full-time EMT positions. We're having a large turnover in part-time staff because of salaries. They're leaving for other towns that do offer full-time. So I had proposed in the 2020 budget, and it was ultimately approved, the addition of 4 full-time staff. There was a delay in getting them started, again, because of the hiring freeze and unknown financial situation. So that is the discrepancy there as to what was actually spent versus budgeted.
So the money is still in the 2020 budget for all of these positions. I don't know why we can't just hire who we need to hire out of the 2020 budget and not put it into the 2021 budget if it's already been budgeted.
Statutorily, we're not permitted to do that, Mayor.
Those positions were hired in 2020. However, when they were planned for early in the year, that did not happen. It occurred later in the year. That's the reason for that discrepancy. So those 4 full-time positions in 2021 will be working the entire year. In addition, I would most likely be recommending adding to that full-time staff in this budget, but that's still to be determined as to the final numbers.
Well, we're also adding part-time staff, yes?
Yes.
What's the
volume? Up until these full-timers.
Right.
Up until this was, these 4 full-timers were hired, it was accomplished with all part-time staff.
What's the volume?
Chief, can you comment on the call volume?
I don't have the specific call volume there, but the town is split into 2. So it's north of Aldridge Road and then south of Aldridge Road. South of Aldridge Road, Howell First Aid takes all those calls, including Ramtown, and the police EMS, they cover everything north of Aldridge Road. So they're extremely busy. There's been a request from other chiefs from other towns to do a shared service agreement where we would provide EMS services for them. I don't know what, Lou, if you have the numbers from 2020 or budgeted versus what we took in. But we always, it seems, if correct me if I'm wrong, but we cover our costs, our operating costs through the EMS unit. And we added those 4 full-timers last year, which was great. It was long overdue. I've been pushing for those positions since I was put in charge of the unit back in 2015, or actually 2012 it was. It's been a long time. So this year I'm requesting an additional 2 to be added to our full-time staff. And once you add those 2, it takes away from the part-timers. So we don't have to hire as many part-timers. Their salary and wages get pushed. When I present the budget, I have to put those numbers, those part-time salaries in the part-time, because I don't know if I'm getting the full-timers. So if I don't get the full-timers,
Gotcha.
if I push those salary and wages to the part-timers, to the full-timers, and I don't get them, then that money's taken out of my part-timers, and I'm going to run out of money on that end.
Gotcha.
So it's worked out tremendous. Our retention rate has gone up because your part-time employees knows there's a potential of them becoming full-time, so they stay instead of going elsewhere. So it really has worked. And any other police, and the manager will back me on this, any other police that has EMS has a whole staff of full-time EMTs. But we do it right. We do a mixture of both because it's not sustainable by having a full staff of full-timers. You just can't bring in that much income. So that's really the only proposed changes in the EMS budget. And finally, the communication. Is that it for EMS?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. As far as the communications budget, Lou, you're going to have to help me out on this one because the budget that was submitted to the council is different than the one that I submitted. The one that I submitted for communications was less than what the council was given. I believe the council was given one that looked like there was a $100,000 increase. And the one that I submitted looked like it appeared to have a $25,000 decrease in it. Do you know what happened with that? I'm thinking that it was.
That's the budget that was provided to the governing body. Should have reflected a $25,000 decrease in that cost center.
Okay. All right.
The binder. I have minus 25,503.
Okay, good. Then I don't. All right, good. Because it kind of scared me when I saw that other budget that I pulled up. So yeah, so my 911 center is down $25,000 in my budget, and that's as a result of Senior Dispatcher Garrity, who was doing the IT, plus he was considered a dispatcher. Well, he retired, and I took his position away and just made it IT, and I put that IT position in the police department and didn't replace his position in a 911 center. The very few times that he actually did 911 services, we have part-timers that pick up that slack. So that's where the difference comes in. I didn't ask for a replacement 911, and I'm not going to.
Was he part-time, Chief?
Oh, ma'am.
The person that you, what was it?
No.
Would you say his name was Larry? I'm sorry.
Glenn.
Glenn
is a tremendous asset to the police department. He replaced Steve Garrity. He was part-time with us for a while.
Right.
Just put this in perspective. So Town Hall has 2 full-time IT people. I didn't have any. I had basically a part-time IT guy, part-time 911 dispatcher. So, manager recognized that. He allowed me to bring Glenn on part-time to train under Steve in anticipation of Steve retiring. And once he did, Glenn filled that void, and I didn't replace the 911 position. I don't feel a need to do that right now. But he is full-time, tremendous asset to the police department, tremendous.
So of course, part-time had no medical or pension, correct?
No, ma'am.
Correct.
No, none of our part-timers have any of that. And that's all I have. At 429.
For the minutes to
Any other
spare.
questions
No, thank you.
for the chief?
Thank you, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want
Enjoy your vacation.
emergency management comes under you, Brian. Yes, not the chief.
It's its own budget, but
I get confused.
I'm sorry.
I just get confused because who do I ask the question to then?
Most likely our OEM coordinator. If you have a question, I can certainly try and address it.
It is the OEM coordinator that I wanted to ask about.
Right.
So his salary, you know, we went up, the request of his salary is to go up. So what is it? Is he becoming a full-time employee, a part-time employee? I mean.
Right. What that is, currently he receives a stipend to be the OEM coordinator. At the beginning of COVID, so Victor Cook is a full-time code enforcement officer for the town. He received an extra stipend to do the OEM coordinator position. Early on in COVID, because of the amount of work involved, I had detached him from code enforcement and assigned him to do OEM duties full-time. Because of the continuous reporting with FEMA, with CARES Act, all the other grants that are coming in, as well as all the other OEM duties that he's been maintaining. He's been working largely with our HR department for employees that have had exposures, getting them tested, getting vaccinations, things like that. So there were some discussions, and those numbers you're looking at is to make him a full-time OEM coordinator. So that's the marked increase for that salary line.
And you would replace code enforcement?
Yes.
So you'd go from part-time to full-time, and we hire another full-time employee.
Yes.
So what happens to when we only can hope and pray COVID goes away and the numbers aren't needed to be tracked and the position becomes, you know, back to a stipend? What do you do then? I mean, we can't foresee this going on. I can't for 5 years, 6 years. What do you do then?
Well, I agree. I hope it's not going to go on that long, but then again, who would have thought we'd
Fair.
still be sitting here a year later when it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
I could comment on that.
Sorry,
Sure.
Chief.
I could comment on that. I absolutely support making that position full-time. This town is very busy. It's large. Not only during the pandemic has he been an invaluable tool for us, but just normal police calls, so we would call it emergency management, storms, everything that you've seen happen in the town over the past couple of years. There's work there for him, and on the downtime, there's threat assessments, there's grant writing. Basically, the grants that are out there could pay for his position.
I mean, if that's the case, that's fine. But you're talking about now going from a one person to two employees, full time, benefits, salary, and to be honest and to be fair, you just said it. This has been going on for, you know, OEM and FEMA and all that good stuff been going on for 6 years. Why now? Because of COVID? And I'm not being facetious when I ask that question. Is that
fair point?
So
his workload has been increasing exponentially just for OEM, regardless of COVID. The volume going through OEM has been a lot larger. Right. The call outs that he responds to, basically every structure fire, they call out OEM to be used as a resource. They go through him, whether it's access to the Red Cross or county assets, things like that.
So why not another part-timer?
That was my question. Thank you.
No, sorry.
That's okay.
So some of the grants are based upon full-time positions. So, you know, that prevents a town from automatically starting up just, oh, we just have this part-time guy here. We have emergency manager. We're going to apply for this grant. So a lot of them have to a full-time position is included in the grant in order to apply.
Guidelines we have to follow for that to happen, to be reimbursed. Got to follow. Yeah. Okay. I understand that.
Okay. So code enforcement. So do we need a full-time in that position?
Yes. So that department has been working short, you know, one body for a year now. I'm sure Matt Howard could give justification why he needs that. I mean, he has worked short with the remaining code enforcement officers, you know, understanding what's going on. Plus, as he said in his budget hearing, they had decreased their enforcement activities during COVID, but, you know, it's time to try and get things back to normal. He's trying to get his officers out doing more enforcement again.
So Chief just mentioned that there are probably grants. I mean, I would be comfortable knowing if there's grants out there to support the OEM position. I would be okay with that. But remember, you know, a grant sometimes is only a year or whatever. So I do hate to tie a salary onto a grant. But I mean, at least if it could help a little bit, offset, if we get some grants that even, you know, offset a little bit, I mean, maybe we could look at that. I mean, I would think that is
the process. As you may recall, our last meeting last week, you approved accepting a $10,000 grant for our OEM. Right. That's something that comes around every year that helps supplement salary. There are a lot of smaller grants that get pieced together. And going back to Councilwoman Richmond, your question earlier, in a year or 2 years, if the workload isn't there, you know, to be honest, I do believe that it will be. If he's there, we can assign other duties to him. But, you know, that could be something that the council at that time may decide they don't want to fund that position in a full-time capacity any longer. But I am leaning towards including that as a recommendation, just because the workload is definitely there.
I have a question for you, Mr. Geegan. Your opinion on, do you think grants are being levied by governments because of COVID? So my concern is, if COVID went away, would we have all of these grants presenting themselves in the same fashion?
There's always government grants out there. Even as the chief said, just with the police department, he's working on a few different grants. There's always different things coming out, different programs, different initiatives. It seems to be whatever the hot button. I guess my question is, don't you think that there are grants available now that obviously are connected to COVID? So maybe, no, I understand. There's always something available. You're right. And often we miss them. However, I wouldn't want to react to something thinking that the grants will be available as a result of COVID in full force, and then commit to something that I don't know, you know, that we're able to readily fulfill in the future. That's all. I mean, Victor Cook, and actually I shouldn't even talk about personnel publicly. I'll speak to you offline.
If you want to reference, Neptune Township has a very robust emergency management program. Mm-hmm. So you can always reach out to your counterparts over there and ask them about it and what they do during the non-COVID times.
Yeah, I'm certainly not saying that OEM is not a needed facet in the community. That's not what I'm saying. I just don't want to commit a salary to grants that may or may not be there based on COVID. That's all. That's my only point.
And to the mayor's point too about the part-timers, you know, now we're talking benefits. You know, if they're taking cars home and they're getting new vehicles. I mean, it's more than just, you know, giving somebody a full-time job, creating another full-time job. There's all these other caveats that come with that. So we just have to just make sure, obviously, that, you know, we're just not arbitrarily just, you know, making new jobs.
I remind my personnel of that every day, ma'am.
Okay.
One other thing, the code enforcement position, is that also, and I don't know this, is that a union position, or?
Yes.
It is. So that also has step increases and all that other kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
But that's currently budgeted. It's in the budget already, that dollar amount.
Okay.
And it would be.
So, all right. So wait. So what you're saying is we already have the money for
the code enforcement position
in the budget. So you're not asking me or me, not me, I meant us. You're not asking for the salary for the code enforcement. You're just asking for the salary for the OEM. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that makes it a little bit more. It makes it, we're not asking for 2 salaries. Now we're only asking for 1.
There would be a little bit of a savings as well, because the incumbent in that position is up a few steps, where presumably hiring somebody new would start at a lower step. So
Right.
there may be a small savings realized there as well.
Okay, that's reasonable.
Manager, so where does that put, if you, is it a lateral move for Victor? Does he become union? If we're creating a new position, do we get to set the criteria? Do you get to set, or the chief, who gets to set the criteria on what he gets opposed to what he's getting already at OEM? I mean, over at, the other department.
My recommendation would be that it would not be in the union, just because of the nature of the work involved. We would have to create a salary ordinance to properly compensate him for that pay, that work, and we'd create the job description from it.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Mayor, if I can point out, we're running a little late here, and we do have to open it up as a hearing of citizens.
Okay. So at this time, I would like to open up the meeting to the hearing of citizens. Brian, do we have anybody that has any questions regarding the budget?
Thank you, Chief, by the way. Thank you.
Chief, I'm booting you. Any members of the public that wish to address the governing body, please raise your hand. I'll give it a second. Mayor, I'm not seeing anybody that wishes to address the governing body.
Okay. All righty. So then at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved, Mayor.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you,
We
Brian.
need to do a roll call. Roll call.
He was trying.
She's on
Sorry.
mute, Allison. Okay.
I'm so sorry.
It was trying.
Okay. Roll call, Mr. Bonovich,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Ms. Richmond,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Russo,
Yes.
Mayor Berger.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.